Hey, welcome to the Glasses Push. My name is Chuck, and in this video we're talking about the book Armada by Ernest Cline. Why should you care? Who should read it? For any fan of Ernest Cline's first book, Ready Player One, it's pretty much a given you're going to want to read this because Ernest Cline has a very kinetic writing style. It's very light, it's very fast, and there's lots of references to all of your favorite things. So, fans of Ready Player One are definitely welcome here. Anyone that's ever played a classic arcade game or is really interested in the alien invasion movies, Armada is a welcome, irreverent addition to that type of movie. What did I think? After finishing Ready Player One, and upon learning that Ernest Cline had a follow-up, I had to tear through that book immediately. And I talked about Ready Player One before, and I'll link the video here if I figure out how YouTube does that. So the good news about Armada is that it is almost exactly like Ready Player One. The bad news about Armada, it is almost exactly like Ready Player One. Let's walk through a few of the similarities. A high school age protagonist who is incredibly proficient in the art of video gaming. The events within the book are modeled after popular games, movies, and music. There's an awkward yet obvious romantic subplot. And in the end, Ernest Cline wraps up the book with a simultaneously complimentary and contradictory message to the content of the entirety of the book that preceded the ending. Just because there are a lot of similarities to his previous work, though, does not mean that it's not an enjoyable book. In fact, the action in the book starts immediately, the very first sentence. As soon as the action starts, though, then immediately we're served a ton of references, music, movies, and video games, which, while they serve the plot, it almost feels as though it was more important that we got all of the references served to us as to present all relevant plot points in the most coherent and intriguing fashion. I would say that Armada does offer more mystery and surprise than Ready Player One did, but the pacing is an absolute mess. What made Ready Player One great is that it was practically non-stop. Just, it kept building and it went at a very fast pace. Whereas some of the most important scenes in Armada, especially the climax, feel incredibly rushed when some of the earlier action sequences were given a much more stretched out experience where the tension was held for a longer period of time. If somebody were to read Armada before Ready Player One, they wouldn't notice all the issues with Ernest Cline retreading all of the popular elements of Ready Player One. However, the pacing problems would be evident, and the characters are absolutely paper thin. There's nothing too dynamic to any of the characters, and in fact, about the closest thing we get to an actual fully developed character arc, we find that one of the most abrasive characters in the entire book actually has a character trait that we may not have seen coming. Aside from that, everything regarding the characters is really one note. The simultaneous high point and low point of Armada is the conclusion, in which, much like Ready Player One, Ernest Cline somehow offers a scathing indictment of the same plotting and ideas that were celebrated throughout the rest of the book. So much of the book fetishizes space battles or just regular battles. Sometimes they're emotional, sometimes they're physical, sometimes they're personal, and sometimes they're intergalactic. So it is very interesting to have a book reconcile these conflicting ideas. To have such a striking, complicated message at the end of an otherwise very light, flowy book is one of the things that I think makes Ernest Cline a very promising author for the future. Because he has big ideas and he knows when to make things fun and when to make things serious. But the last scene, although it has a very interesting message and it is a refreshing twist, it doesn't feel entirely earned. So, what would I rate it? This is really difficult for me because Ernest Cline does such a great job pandering to my inner nerd. I mean, anyone that can throw out a reference to Rush's song Vital Signs just out of nowhere is a gentleman and definitely deserves some type of honor. However, I feel he was too focused on repeating the success of Ready Player One instead of serving us something different. Was it an enjoyable read? Yes, of course. But it was not at all original, not even by Ernest Cline's own standards. I'm hesitantly feeling a D+. We'll say a 68. It's below average. It passes, but it could have done a lot better. So, when should you read it? Well, I certainly wouldn't recommend that anybody stop what they're doing and pick up this book immediately, but under the condition that you have already read Ready Player One, and 2, you have pretty much worked your way through most of the other books you're wanting to read, and 3, assuming you liked Ready Player One, you're wanting to go back to something comfortable and familiar. Armada fits the bill. And where should you read it? And where would I recommend that you read this book? As close to a video game console or a computer that has Space Invaders on it, as close as you can possibly get to that. Because after reading this book, it made me want to kill some pixelated aliens, something fierce. So, those were my thoughts, but have you read it? If so, what did you think? Have you read Ready Player One? How would you compare the two? Am I totally off base? Is it even fair to compare books? What is a book? Is anyone listening to me? I've been Chuck, and this has been The Glasses Push. It did feel right. One more time. Push. Better.